Ravi Karunanayake reissued summons to appear before Bond Presidential Commission. Presidential Commission extended by 3 months. Hambantota Port concessionary agreement approved by Cabinet. Petroleum Corporation unions to continue strike action. GMOA calls off strike action following discussions with Minister Sagala Ratnayaka. Main suspect in shooting incident involving Jaffna High Court judge surrenders to police.
Hello there, very good evening and welcome to your Primetime News Bulletin. I'm Shane Silva.
And I'm Azra Hassan. Here's a look at the stories in detail. The tenure of the Presidential Commission has been further extended while summons has been reissued on former Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayake. Newsfirst Zulfiq Farzan reports on Bondgate.
Presidential Commission of Inquiry has reissued summons on Minister Ravi Karunanayake to appear before the Commission tomorrow. Earlier, summons were issued to the Minister on Saturday to appear today. However, Karunanayake's attorney informed the Commission that the Minister was not available today due to other obligations and requested another date. The Commission said it cannot delay proceedings and issued resummons for tomorrow. President Maithripala Sirisena has further extended the tenure of the Commission by 3 months from 27th July to 27th October. Here's a summary of yesterday's proceedings. The witness, Director of East West Properties PLC, revealed that Arjun Aloysius of Perpetual Group had leased her 4,000 square feet unit at Monarch Residencies on behalf of Ravi Karunanayake's family. The 6-month lease payment was 7.3 million rupees and 2.92 million rupees as a non-refundable deposit for 2 months with an additional cash payment of 1.4 million rupees. The initial agreement was to be signed with a company named Sulvasutra. However, it was not signed as Arjun Aloysius was not listed as a director of this company. The lease agreement was signed with Walt and Rowe Associates Private Limited, of which he is a director along with Jeffrey Joseph Aloysius. The sum of 7.3 million rupees was given to Walt and Rowe Associates Private Limited by Perpetual Capital Holdings, the parent company of Perpetual Treasuries Limited. In July to August 2016, the witness was contacted by Arjun Aloysius requesting she destroy her lease agreement as he had done the same. After the lease expired, the Karunanayake family had stayed an additional 2 months and later purchased the apartment for a sum of 165 million rupees through a company named Global Transportation and Logistics. The wife and daughter of Minister Ravi Karunanayake are directors of this company. Yesterday afternoon, Arjun Aloysius handed over his communication devices to the CID. However, his attorney stated that Aloysius's phone, used in 2015, was destroyed in Singapore.
There is a very easy shortcut to this whole commission report once it's released, because what should be done is they should give by legislation enforce the decision of the commission which was done by Mr. Jaya Jayawardena when Mrs. Bandaranaike's disabilities were imposed. The Supreme Court decided that the commission report is unwarranted and should be cancelled, but what he did was he brought legislation giving effect to the commission report and cancelling the decision of Chief Justice Samarakon. So what should be done is take the shortcut, otherwise you'll have to go through the different procedures in different courts, once again going back to the Supreme Court when 2 eminent Supreme Court judges have now given the decision that it should be followed by legislation.
If somebody who had gone through very closely the history of the bond scam in this country, you would have observed that on the very first day, when it took place on 27th of February 2015, the whole market was agitated because there was this one particular bond issue where half of that bond issue had been taken by a single primary dealer, not at his own money but at the money belonging to the one of the state banks, the Bank of Ceylon. If the government had taken correct action at that time, all these things that has happened so far wouldn't have taken place for us. Unfortunately for Sri Lanka, and unfortunate for the government, and unfortunate for the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the government didn't take any action, but instead government tried to cover it up. And they could not, however, silence the civil society activists, media, and also they could not silence the people of this country. So now we have come to a stage where the things that have been revealed before the Bond Commission, it's very difficult for the country to unravel it now, because all those people who are involved in the bond scandal will have to be dealt with severely in terms of the law today.
The revelations made at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry prompted strong words of criticism in Parliament today.
I'm saying this in the presence of the President. We made a complaint with the Bribery Commission with regard to the bond scam. We made a complaint with the CID. However, none of these complaints were investigated. We are thankful for the President for appointing a Presidential Commission. I tabled in this House that the apartment payments were made by the company of Arjun Aloysius. When I did that, Ravi Karunanayake responded to me by saying, "Do not lie, I will take you to courts." He challenged me to prove this claim. The Prime Minister informs the Speaker that MP Mahindananda Alutgamage is lying and should be reported to the respective committee. Yesterday, a witness identified as Anika testified before the Presidential Commission. Arjun Aloysius pays the lease. The minister and his wife lives in that house. That finance minister was involved in the bond scam. When we revealed these facts, no one believed us. Everything is revealed before the commission. The former finance minister, who is also the present foreign minister, must resign.
වර්තමාන විදේශ කටයුතු ඇමතිවරයා හරිනම් මේ වෙනකොට ඉල්ලා අස්වෙන්න ඕනේ. මෙතුමා දිගින් දිගටම කතා කරා මේ ජනාධිපති කොමිසමේ.
Within a short period of time, the Presidential Commission of Inquiry has managed to uncover many details on the issues that surround perpetual treasuries. We wish to remind the members in the opposition that Entrust belongs to the brother of one of your colleagues. 9.5 billion rupees was swindled. I request the President, Prime Minister and the Finance Minister to appoint a Presidential Commission to probe that as well.
This was your first ever theft and you were caught red-handed. Following yesterday's evidence, the entire country is aware who the thief is and who the gang of thieves are. There is nothing to hide anymore. The person from Perpetual Treasuries had leased an apartment for the former finance minister. It's a luxury apartment. The rent is almost 1.16 million rupees a month. The country understands the nature of this relationship.
For 2 years, this matter has been extensively discussed at various platforms. I'm not going to speak on the revelation made yesterday. There's an old local saying on things like this. In the coming days, individuals who are in high places than Ravi Karunanayake will be named at this commission.
Malik Samaravikrama Matara.
Commission එකට රුෂාන්
හිංසකව ඉන්න කෙනෙක්.
නිකන් ඉන්නකොට
හරිද පූසෙක් හැංගිලා ඉන්නවා වගේ.
අපිත් නිකන් ඉන්න හරි අහිංසකයන් රුෂාන්.
මොකද එතුමා එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂ සභාපති වෙලා ඉන්නකොට සාකච්ඡාවට කීපයක්.
සාකච්ඡාවක් නේ දැන් පැහැදිලිව රවි කරුණානායක මහත්මයා
Minister Ravi Karunanayaka's letter during the 100-day government is produced at this commission. It was an undated letter sent to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. It says that the issuance of bonds was the result of a discussion between Ravi Karunanayake, Malik Samaravikrama and Kabir Hashim. At that time, Malik Samaravikrama was the only chairman of the UMP. He was not an MP nor a minister and does not have a public mandate. The country is aware that the ill-gotten gains have been invested in many areas without any fear. Who permitted the distillery in the eastern province? Who invested in the newspaper that print in large numbers? When we made a statement that the funds from the bond scam are being used to print a newspaper, it was Ravi Karunanayake who read an article from a newspaper in Parliament. This is because of the connection he has to that. The Prime Minister must say that the Minister has done this and that he had looted the funds from his institution. Or the Minister must say that he did it based on the instructions of the Prime Minister. There are no Mr. Cleans in this country. He does this scam and then becomes a foreign minister. How can we encourage foreign investment? Malik Samaravikrama had gone to the meeting without an invitation and he launched the first game in this bond scam. However, nothing is said about Malik Samaravikrama. Malik Samaravikrama attended the meeting illegally. They must take his file. The Presidential Commission must summon him and inquire his presence at the meeting. He will say he was raising funds for the party. If Malik Samaravikrama is summoned, many more things will be revealed.
අපේ කැබිනට් මෙම්බර් කෙනෙක් හැබැයි ඒ චෝදනාව බරපතලයි. ඒ චෝදනාව පිළිබඳව මම හිතන්නේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා අගමැතිතුමාගේ අවධානය යොමු වීම ඉතාම වැදගත්. ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂයේ මේ ආණ්ඩුවේ ප්‍රධාන පාර්ශවකරු ඔබතුමාලා තාමත් සීමාව ඇතුළේ ඉන්නේ නැහල සීමාව ඉවසීමේ සීමාව. ඒක පක්ෂේ අපි මේ ගාලිතු දිනුවක් මේක ඉන්නු ගන්නතුරු ඔබතුමාලාට එන කලින් අපේ අදහස් කියන්න කැමති නැහැ. ටිකක් ලැජ්ජාවකින් හිතෙන්නද නේ අපේ කැබිනට් එකට ආයි මොකද යහපාලනය කළ බුදුබාය ඇති කරගත්ත එක මේ වගේ චෝදනාවක් වෙනකොට නෑ ලැජ්ජාවක් හිතුනද සතුටක් හිතුනද මේ පිළිකුලක් හිතුනද කියන දේ කාරණා දේවල් ගැනත් මම කතා කරන්න කැමති නැහැ. ඉතින් එහෙම.
Stay in News First. We'll be back after this short commercial break. Welcome back to the news. The Petroleum Trade Unions Collective says it will continue with the strike action as it did not receive a reasonable solution during talks held this afternoon. The Trade Unions Collective said it did not agree with the request made during the discussions with the Secretary to the Ministry to call off the strike and take part in a discussion with the President.
The Petroleum Trade Unions Collective launched a strike action by halting the distribution of fuel at midnight yesterday in protest against handing over the China Bay oil tanks to India and Hambantota Port oil tanks to China. Long queues were seen at filling stations since the announcement of the strike action last evening, with most of them running out of fuel by this afternoon.
The situation is quite disappointing. I should say to the government, if they can't handle their country properly, they just
because here actually we are getting in trouble. We don't have time. We are wasting our time on the road. No fuel. Actually, I don't recommend. I don't accept these kind of things from the government.
They are eating the productivity of the country, no? So what to do now? We are in the queue and we are wasting more than 1 hour.
Been in this line for far too long. It's quite disappointing, honestly, and I'm kind of disappointed about it.
Our correspondent said certain filling stations had restricted the distribution of fuel to vehicles attached to state institutions only. Not a single bowser of fuel has been dispatched from 12 fuel storage facilities. The supply of fuel to aircraft and power plants have also been halted. Up to now, we have not been informed of any discussion of any sort. If people being inconvenienced is hurting the government, it is the government's responsibility to give us proper solutions to these issues and bring an end to our strike action. The Ceylon Electricity Board said practical issues have arisen in unloading 35,000 metric tons of fuel brought for the Keralapitia power plant. The CEB adds that existing fuel could sustain thermal power plants only for a period of 2 days. Despite the trade union action of the Petroleum Corporation workers, filling stations of Lanka IOC continues to distribute fuel. They cannot carry on a fuel strike like that because 20% of the fuel is distributed by Lanka IOC. Also, it is the private businessmen who distribute fuel brought into the country. If they try to drag on a fuel strike, it would be a problem to the government. But I do not think that it would come to that point. There can be no trade union action over government policies. We can talk about their trade union right if needed. How can trade union action be over government policies?
Cabinet approval has been granted to carry out operations at the Hambantota port as a joint venture together with a Chinese company. Minister of Ports and Shipping Mahinda Samarasinghe says that prior to signing the agreement, it would be presented to Parliament.
This agreement sees the operations undertaken as a public-private partnership between the Sri Lanka Port Authority and the China Merchant Port Holdings. According to the proposal forwarded to Cabinet today, 69.55% of the shares will be owned by the Chinese company and the remaining 30.45% of the shares will be held under the ownership of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. The agreement, which will be signed under a 99-year lease period, will let the Ports Authority purchase all shares of the Hambantota Port after a period of 70 years. The proposed agreement will see the establishment of two limited liability companies registered under the Sri Lanka Companies Act, namely Hambantota International Port Group Services Company and Hambantota International Port Group. Hambantota International Port Group Services Company will be set up to oversee security operations, maritime services, piloting and common services, with Sri Lanka holding 50.7% stake and the Chinese a 49.3% stake. China Merchants Port Holdings will take a majority percentage stake in Hambantota International Port Group that will run the port and its terminals, while the rest will be held by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority.
You spoke on the 80-20 ratio. After I took this over, we were able to bring it to the 70-30 ratio.
The minister also stated that special attention was paid to national security.
Some were of the opinion that this will be used as a port used by the armed forces. We discussed it and we decided that no one can be in charge of security. It should be 100% under the Sri Lankan government. We have appointed a separate committee to coordinate and examine this. The Sri Lanka Ports Authority will be the convener. The Sri Lanka Navy, Police and Defence Ministry are also included in it.
The Sri Lanka Economic Summit 2017 was held in Colombo today under the theme Execute, Transform, Realise. The summit was organised by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce.
The keynote address at the event, which saw the participation of a number of dignitaries, was delivered by Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy.
I think it's wholly incorrect, inappropriate to look at Hambantota as a port deal. It is much more than a port deal. The long lease of the port can catalyze much, much more. What that port would do is to transform an area. You know, it's rather shameful that 69 years after independence, how little we have done for the people of Munragala, for the people of Uva. This investment gives you the potential to transform those areas. You know, we have a political system that is noisy, that is untidy, but I look at the VAT as a template. It gets introduced. There is a law case. It gets withdrawn. Then there is squabbling within the government. But it finally gets passed. It doesn't get passed once, but twice. Now the same thing is happening with Hambantota. Before the end of the month, it will be signed. Again, we think we are going to sign something, and then there are people on the streets, and then all kinds of stuff, and people are squabbling, and it is going to get signed. That is our way of doing things. You know, and really, but think of this. This very untidy, in many ways dysfunctional political system has given us freedom for 70 years. It has given us good social development. So, you know, it has its positive features. It has given us a number of things, but it also is very untidy. We need to see through the noise. See through the noise to see where this system is going.
We are going to sign the Hambantota port deal. We are going to go with it. We have negotiated, and we have negotiated hard. We are going to basically reap maybe $1.1 billion, maybe $400 billion of that just in this year. I do not agree with the investments in Hambantota. I think they were big mistakes, and we should not forget it. But the real question is, what do you make out of a mistake that has already been made? We need to make sure that we are able to get the maximum out of those buried investments.
Coordination failure. I mean, Harvard University's study has very clearly and ruthlessly showed that this is a massive problem. Coordination. The number of ministries, the policies that are made by one ministry is contradictory to the policies of another ministry. There are 4 different ministries that look into agriculture, or 5, and there are issues of access to land, policy uncertainty, particularly in terms of taxes and trade, and I hope these we would certainly be able to address urgently what you can expect in the month or so, with a revised 3-year policy plan to be released at the 2nd anniversary. That will show you precisely what we are going to do till the end of the first term of this government.
The one-day strike action launched today by the Government Medical Officers Association was called off 4 hours after it began. The token strike was called off following discussions between doctors and Minister Sagala Ratnayaka.
Doctors launched their strike action this morning, citing several demands, including a broad investigation into the situation which transpired during the attempted arrest of the convener of the Medical Faculty Students Action Committee, Ryan Jailath. All scheduled clinical services at government-run hospitals were cancelled this morning due to the absence of doctors. Patients who had travelled long distances for treatment left empty-handed.
What about the sick people? What about the poor people? Come now. That's now we want doctor.
They're asking us to come back next Tuesday. What's the point of coming next Tuesday? It's been a month since a surgery was performed on my leg. I cannot sleep at night because the pain is unbearable. I've been up all night to get here.
My body is lifeless now. I had to walk all around to get a token. This is not good. According to Buddhism, they will be cursed.
It would be best if they dispatch all doctors in the Tri-Forces to do this as an essential service instead of these doctors who constantly cause inconvenience to the people.
During the course of the strike action, doctors at the Mawatagama District Hospital in Kurunagala refrained from taking part in the strike action and continued treating patients. Media spokesperson of the Government's Medical Officers Association, Dr. Samantha Ananda, spoke to the media after holding discussions with Minister of Law and Order and Southern Development, Sagala Ratnayaka.
The discussion turned out to be a good one as the minister paid special attention to this matter. He expressed his regret over the white van incident which took place on the 20th of this month. He agreed to submit a report on this matter within a span of 2 weeks. He also instructed the Inspector General of Police to immediately take measures to compile this report. Since we received such positive responses, the GMOA has decided to call off its island-wide strike today. I think we will have to take up equal brooms very soon. I think they have lost the godly respect given to them. It is good that they stop this, or the public will be compelled to make a rash decision. There is a limit. Do not exceed these limits.
A group dressed in plain clothing arrived in a white van and had attempted to kidnap Ryan Jailath of the Medical Students Activist Committee. They entered a meeting and attempted to kidnap him. What disciplinary action has been taken? His question is incorrect. He said it was a white van, but it was a police vehicle. This individual has 5 warrants against him.
Let the Honourable Minister explain this.
Honourable Speaker, it was not a white van, it was a police vehicle. They were dispatched on official duty and the appropriate records have also been maintained. I have called on the IGP to provide a report on what happened when attempts were made to arrest Ryan Jailath. Members of the Colombo Crimes Division got information of the whereabouts of this individual who has warrants against him and they launched an operation to apprehend him on the 20th of this month. Only police officers were involved in the operation to nab him. 4 officers, including the OIC of the CCD, travelled in uniform while 9 officers were dressed in plain clothing. However, they all had their official IDs. I can see that there could have been some shortcomings in this operation. I have instructed the IGP to provide a report in this regard. Finally, if there was any inconvenience caused to the President, the Prime Minister, the government or the citizens due to the actions of the police department, I apologise.
A joint meeting was held this evening demanding Saitam be abolished. The meeting took place in line with the Satyagraha held at Lipton Circus.
Students engaging in the Satyagraha who marched towards Viharamadevi Park from the Lipton Circus conducted the meeting at the open theatre of the Viharamadevi Park. The meeting saw the participation of several representatives from the GMOA and political activists. The former president of the Sri Lanka Medical Council, Professor Carlo Fonseca, arrived at the Lipton Circus.
The main issue in Saitam was the inefficiency of the practical training given to the students of the institute. This has become a national crisis. Around 8,000 medical students have been protesting against this for over 7 to 8 months. There is only one solution to this crisis. First is to abolish the Saitam Medical Institute. Then do justice to the students who were receiving education in the institute. Don't do it. I am begging Anuruddha not to do it. I am begging Haritha not to do it. It is better to chop off my head before that. The students cannot rebel like this. They have to attend lectures. Doctors cannot rebel like this too. Rules were much stricter when it comes to these things in the past. 90% of the doctors do not agree with what Padenia and his group are doing. 90% of the students also don't agree with this. But the university students are helpless. I met around 5 of them yesterday with their parents. They are helpless. They are afraid. Units like the Frontline Socialist Party are ruling these children. The lecturers and students are afraid of them. This is being done through political influence to fulfill their own motives. We have to defeat them. My problem is that we are not doing it right. You're watching your Primetime News Bulletin. We'll be back after this short commercial break. Welcome back to the news. The Foreign Exchange Bill was passed in Parliament today with amendments. 96 members voted for it, while 18 voted against the exchange bill. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe outlined features of the bill in Parliament today.
If you have foreign exchange belonging to them outside the country, even if they are not declared, to bring it in. Because today they can remit up to $1 million without having to pay a tax. Above that you pay a remittance tax only. Just a remittance fee of 1%. So we want the money in Sri Lanka for development.
State Minister of Finance Eran Wickremratne, addressing the economic summit held in Colombo today, also shared his views on the new exchange control legislation.
We are doing away with the decade-old Exchange Control Act. It's a conceptual move away from exchange control to exchange management. There was the criminalization of exchange control violations in the previous act. We have removed that criminalization. There were prison sentences that were possible in the old act. We are moving away from outward control for incentives for exchange being brought into the countries. Those who have pending cases and violations could regularize by remitting and basically paying a penalty fee. If they remit it into government securities, even that fee will not be applicable.
The chief suspect of the Nallur shooting incident, in which the police sergeant assigned for the protection of Jaffna High Court Judge M. Ilanchelian was killed, was arrested after he surrendered to police today.
The suspect, 39-year-old Selvaraza Jayanthan, is a resident of Jaffna. The two other suspects arrested in connection to the shooting were remanded for 14 days after they were produced before the Jaffna magistrate last night. One of the suspects is a brother of the chief suspect, Selvaraza Jayanthan, while the other suspect is a relative.
He is a driver. He drives a bus along the Punkadativ line. There is a rumor he has 4 children.
The Tinakkural newspaper reported today that the main suspect of the Vidya murder-rape case, Swiss Kumar, and the main suspect of the Nallur shooting incident, Selvaraza Jayanthan, share a close relationship. The newspaper went on to say the police suspected the shooting was targeted at Jaffna High Court Judge M. Ilanchelian. The article stated that when inquired, the superintendent of police in charge of Jaffna denied the newspaper report. The Ministry of Justice has decided to provide special security to High Court judges and officials of the Attorney General's Department. Large crowds arrived today to pay respects to Police Sergeant Sarat Premachandra, killed in the shooting close to the Nallur Kovil.
श्रेष्ठ DIG महत्या
According to the senior DIG, the shooting was not aimed at the judge. It was a different series of events that transpired. So we can only ascertain this after investigations. We cannot expect what will happen and when it will happen. They constantly have to be aware of things when providing security. Even the police officers in my security detail are all Sinhalese. Judges in the south say the same thing about the police officers who are dispatched from the north. There is trust.
Former Jaffna High Court Judge K. Sivapak Sundaram and Inspector General of Police Pujit Jayasundara were among those who paid their last respects to the late police sergeant today.
This officer sacrificed his life in the line of duty in an honorable way. He was granted a promotion of sub-inspector with immediate effect. When I came to pay my respects, I got to know that his wife served as a female police officer. I hope to make arrangements for her to serve as a police constable.
Demonstrations were held in the northern and eastern provinces today as well in protest to the shooting in Nallur, Jaffna.
Former Minister A.R. Mansoor passed away today while receiving treatment at a private hospital in Colombo. Mansoor was 84 years old at the time of his demise. He first entered Parliament through the United National Party in 1977 and went on to serve in numerous ministerial portfolios. A.R. Mansoor was also attorney at law with a career spanning over 50 years. And that's the wrap of this edition of Primetime News. For the news team, I'm Azra Hassan.
And I'm Shed Silva. Take care and good night.